When you think of someone who's a perfectionist, do you picture somebody that has color coded everything or everything's in a certain order all the time? Okay, let's be honest. Some of us are a little like that. We might be kind of on that side. But I've got news for you. Perfectionism wears more than one face, and you might not even know the kind that has a hold of you. My name is Elyssa Smith. I'm a trauma informed life strategist. And on today's episode of the Unlock Your Blocks podcast, we're exploring three types of perfectionists and how to know which one might be running your show. They all start from basically the same place. So let's discover their origins. And then I'm going to tell you the three types of of perfectionists. I'm going to purposely leave that in because I just did something imperfectly. You're welcome. So let's talk about where it comes from. This need to be perfect, this unacceptability of mistakes. As a kid, you probably had evidence that your survival system, in order to keep you safe, in order to make sure that you got all your needs met or as many as possible met, emotionally, physically, this goes for everything. But you have a lovely little sympathetic nervous system, and its job is to keep you alive. It believes also that no matter what, you are under a life or death threat whenever you're stressed. So think about a little thing. Think about, oh, your ice cream spilled on the floor. Your little system is going to freak out, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, all the things because of that one little thing. Well, then imagine that it's a certain response that your system is getting, that you as a child are getting from other people over a period of time. Your survival system, on purpose, because it's good at surviving, is going to get really good at noticing what type of behavior on your part is most likely to get your needs met or to avoid the most pain. So let's look at childhood things that can cause this. So as a child, maybe you were only praised for being flawless. Maybe you never really got praised unless you were completely performing perfectly, okay, or performing really, really well, which teaches you that worth is conditional. So, when I was growing up, Dr. Spock was all the craze, the child psychologist, like working with parents and telling them, ignore your children when, they're misbehaving and reward them when they're doing well. That is also how you train puppies, incidentally. But puppies don't really have this fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, nor do they have a need to be securely attached in a healthy, secure attachment with attachment theory in mind with a parent. So when a child only gets praised for their performance, it's a results based praise. And that means because we all gravitate towards praise, we all gravitate towards affirmation from our caregivers, we want to approximate whatever's going to get that because that gives us a dopamine response, an oxytocin response. This is like the inner drugstore of the brain that we were designed to create nice chemicals when our caregivers are happy with us. Because if our caregivers are happy, then we are going to get more of our needs met. It's actually just sort of a chemical and scientific truth about how we are made. So that's great. It's great. We're programmed. We're supposed to make our caregivers happy. However, if the only time that they express happiness, or if they express the most happiness, when you just performed really well, then we get the impression that we only deserve to be praised during the times where we are performing with no mistakes. And what that does, it doesn't only just give us conditional self-worth, but it also gives us this idea that we should be able to control outcomes. So when you can't control the outcome, that's when your brain goes to work with your survival mode. So we also might have gotten criticized or sort of compared maybe to a sibling or somebody else at school, or, a lot of times it was a sibling. And so it teaches us to fear mistakes. If you make a mistake, you get criticized, or if you make a mistake, you get compared to somebody else that's doing better. Also, with this whole controlling the outcome thing, it creates in us this need to work harder, be better, do more in order to guarantee an outcome. But can we actually ever do that? No. I mean, humans can't guarantee outcomes like ever, basically. There's always going to be something with our behavior or something with the other people involved or something with the activity or the timing or whatever it is that we cannot control. All we can control is our reasonable effort in an area. We cannot control whether we make mistakes. We cannot control whether we get the A plus or the A, but trying to control a result and working your little tail off as a kid. I mean, I was burned out. Gosh, I think I was burned out. The first time I remember truly feeling burned out was in third grade. So I'm like, I was 9. Like, what was I doing? It's like drawing horse book reports and, whatever. But I was like, my little nervous system was like, perform, achieve. You got to get the accolades. So trying to control the outcome, trying to get that perfect, reach that perfection, reach that perfect grade or the perfect score or the perfect way that you played the piano piece, all of those things are safer than risking failure, which would be to not overwork, right? So now when we get to be adults, this is not super helpful behavior, right? You're probably still listening to this episode because you're like, "Oh my gosh, my perfectionism is killing me and I need to know which one." Or you're like, "Hey, I think I'm getting in my own way somehow." So if you are the type of person that pushes too hard through pain, okay? If you are the type of person that sees a problem and you're just like the solution is always hard work, then you are one of these types of perfectionists called the overachiever. That person needs to work harder all the time to try and guarantee those results, try and control the ending. We got to do that. And you have to work really hard to try and control the ending. Or maybe you're that person that stalls endlessly. When you get going on something, then you're like, halt, and you put the brakes on and you're like, I can't go any further than this. Then you're the procrastinator. That's another way that perfectionism looks, is that perfectionists oftentimes look, quote, lazy because we procrastinate, we put things off. But the reason we do that is because we are trying to protect ourselves from an imperfect or unknown outcome. We don't know what's going to happen if we make a mistake. We are not guaranteed in our minds, our little survival mind is feels like we are not guaranteed a good outcome if we make a mistake. So it will stop you from doing the thing so that you can't make a mistake or get rejected or get abandoned or get kicked out of the herd and eaten by a predator. It escalates very quickly for the survival brain. It thinks immediately if you get rejected, you are somebody's lunch tomorrow. Like that's happening. You're not with the herd anymore. You're not protected. So it has a lot invested in the next decision that you make to try and keep you from getting rejected if you are the procrastinator. So, another way that we do this is avoiding action completely. This may look a lot to other people like even more than the procrastinator. This may look like laziness. This may look like you play it safe all the time. You never take a step outside your comfort zone. You've been saying like, "Oh, it'd be cool if I started that business. It'd be cool if I, wrote that book. It'd be neat if I, picked up this hobby or did this or did that." But you never actually take any steps towards that because you're the avoider. You are the person that needs to avoid any activity where you're not going to be perfect at it. Keeps you from learning new things, keeps you from doing stuff that you haven't done before. It keeps you from having any new life experiences. And these three ways, the overachiever, the procrastinator, and the avoider, those are some of the three faces of perfectionism that we may not necessarily recognize. When you think perfectionist, you think of somebody that like needs to line things up next to each other, all the time, make sure everything is just make sure the picture on the frame on the wall is exactly right. Yes, that can be part of it, but you might also be looking at a perfectionist when you've got this person that's really, really burned out over in the corner and she can't stop thinking that hard work is the answer. And then you might have this person who's like kicking herself for, gosh, if I could just quit doom scrolling on my phone and just actually force myself to do the work at hand, I would get so much farther. That's your procrastinator. She's protecting herself. She doesn't realize it, but she is. And then the avoider, where she's like, nope, I'm just going to stay in my lane. I've always been, let's say she's a school teacher. I've always been a teacher. That's what I have the capacity to do. Everyone in my family is teachers, and this is what I'm going to do. But secretly, she just doesn't really love it. She wants to go and pursue something else, but she never will if she's the avoider and she doesn't deal with this pattern. So we can just stay stuck, girls. We could just stay stuck. That is the whole thing. We end up not ever actually achieving that I don't care if it's a high level or not, but that next level for us. It doesn't have to be that you're performing it perfectly, but like live, right? We want to live. We want to live big. We want to live out loud. So as an adult, if you're dealing with any of these phases of the perfectionist, you're dealing probably regularly with a low level of anxiety or a high level of anxiety, let's be honest. You're dealing with a lot of self-doubt, you're dealing with your progress being blocked all the time, even though you might have good intentions. Maybe you get into a cycle of doing, get really excited on the front end of something and then you lose your motivation because the avoider starts to take over, right? This affects our relationships. Perfectionism doesn't allow you to just be. And so you're going to have a struggle when it comes to relationships. You're going to have a struggle knowing what you need at any given moment. You're going to struggle with your work. Creative projects aren't going to come naturally to you. You're going to be stopped or slowed by perfectionistic patterns constantly until you address it. And here's the wonderful news. This is why I have this podcast. We can address it. We can reprogram ourselves from those childhood beliefs that say it's not safe, don't get rejected, don't get abandoned, you're going to get eaten. We can program those to say, actually, there's no wild animal. And even if there was, I'm an adult now. You update the programming that says, I actually am going to be okay if I'm rejected. Now, for me, I still have to really choose carefully what I take on because I have to know for myself before I take something on. Am I in a place where if I get rejected or abandoned, I do have the resources that I need to take care of myself? And I hope that you'll consider that as well. Is this something where I'm like, risking too much? There is such a thing as risking too much in the name of progress, but you will feel it in yourself if this is aligned with you or not. And if it's aligned, then you are able to have the resources that you need to take care of yourself and to make sure that you get all your needs met, even if you fail. You've got to fail forward. We can't fail backward. We can't fail and then be like, yes, it's not like, finding success and finding joy and peace and wealth and abundance is not like, the failure that we see along the way of on that road. It's not like what our system thinks. Our system thinks you touched the hot stove once and it was hot and it burned you. We're not going to ever do that again. That's what it thinks we're up against. But what we're actually up against is like a nice long hike that just burns your muscles a lot sometimes. And what we can do is we can just take one step after another and then sit down along the side of the trail when we need a minute. And we replenish and we drink and we have our food and we give ourselves fuel. And whatever it takes, we can continue the climb. It's not the hot stove, it's not that burner that is really hot. It's the long climb that starts to burn. It's a different burn, but our system sees it as the same. So it's up to you to decide which one of these phases of perfectionism do you think you're dealing with? And how do you want to gently rein it back in? So, one small experiment. So, what are we doing with the solution here? So, you have to observe which one of these styles shows up for you. That really helps in the process of solving this problem. When you label something like a feeling or this type of perfectionism, it will help it loosen its grip. So, I'm going to give you a couple of assignments. It might freak your system out a little bit, but the first one is I want you to do something small imperfectly on purpose. I will never forget the day that I got this assignment from a therapist, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 therapists ago. I've been through like a dozen or more. And it was challenging to like leave. I don't know. I think I left dirty dishes in the sink or something. I mean, and I was like I was very tightly wound when I first started going through my recovery process from trauma and from all of the self-sabotage. But doing something imperfectly that you wouldn't normally do imperfectly, just let it be good enough and see what your system does with that. If you're not ready for that, that's okay. I always recommend that people book a 15-minute, if you're a woman and you want to work on this and you want to know where this stuff came from, you can book a free 15-minute call with me and we'll just talk about where I'll ask you some questions and help you figure out where did this start for you. And that will help us know how are we going to start taking steps to release it. So another thing that you could do as a mini experiment is to finish a stalled project. Is there something that you started and then you lost your motivation or you got burned out because you were putting too much pressure on yourself? Maybe go back to that little project and just see if you could finish it. Declutter that drawer that you've been meaning to do. Whatever it is, it could be really little, but we want to give your system an experience where you're safe doing something that it didn't think it was safe doing. This is another one that could be challenging. And it's not always, this is not always a good idea. But I want you to take a look at something in your life that it would be safe to do this with and to start a project without over planning it. Now, if you are putting on a big event, this does not apply to that, right? I do want you to plan that. But if you start something without planning out every single little detail and like overthinking everything, it might be hard at first to do that because maybe that's how you found safety is I call it the need to know trigger. We need to know everything before we get started. But perhaps you have, a little something small that you could do and be like, you know what? I don't know everything about this, but what if I just take the first step? And that will challenge your system to let you know what it's feeling when you are not over planning every detail ahead of time. So you can just move forward a little bit and then see how you feel. Eventually, putting a lot of small steps together, plus doing the rewiring of the inner child work and all that kind of stuff to reprogram your brain to update it. Hey, I'm an adult now. I can make sure I don't get eaten by a predator. It seems really simple, but it's complex what your system has done, where it's kind of fired and wired together those neurosystem, the brain beliefs, like the things that you're actually the neural pathways. So when you are rewiring it, it takes some time, but you can start with tiny little messages to your survival system. It's safe to do this. So I would love for you to share with me what your style is. If you want to find me on Instagram, or you could put it in the YouTube notes if you're watching this on YouTube. If you want to put it in the comments, or just send me a DM on Instagram. It's Elyssa C. Smith. And I would love to hear from you and know what your style is and what is your next step that you're going to do that's a little bit scary to help your inner perfectionist feel safe. Until next time I see you, take such good care.